And I'm gonna shoot you the
All right,
I'm gonna send you the whiteboard.
perfect. How's it going, everyone? We're back to episode number 12, 13. And today our whole goal is we're going to talk about how to get the tone just right when we're prompting. I think a lot of times when we're building a prompt, we talked about this last time when we built the AI content pipeline. It's really first, it's essential to get the information correct and presented the way you want to get it presented. But then you want to go do part two. And part two is actually making the prompts do what you want them to do. And I think last time we spent a lot of time talking about the infrastructure, the tooling, and also just getting the data across and some vibe coding processes that Dexter and I use when we go do this. I think today our goal is we want to talk a little bit more about exactly how we're going to go ahead and make these prompts better. So just to recap everyone, Dexter, do you want to show everyone what we were doing yesterday with yesterday's pipeline or last week's
Yeah.
pipeline? Sorry.
Yeah. So like I have the whiteboard here. I just made a copy of the one from last week because we're gonna add to it. But we built this system with a back end and a front end, a data bot base, and kind of an API in between them. And these kind of pipelines where we would take a Zoom meeting idea, we download the video and send it to YouTube and summarize the transcript and then draft a bunch of content based on that video. And we had a little bit of like a human in the loop refinement workflow. Let me see if I think I have it running. Actually, I'm
You
certain I
can
have
just
it
run the
running.
new one. It's fine too. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so this is the updated version of it. So you can see we've kind of done some imports. We've added a bunch of stuff, like connecting the Luma events to the Zoom meetings using some mix of AI and not AI. We've added what is it? The ability to create a draft PR in GitHub, which I'll show you what one of those looks like. Um, but then it's, we've got the summarization of the key points. We have this timestamp stuff that we looked at, and then it will generate a Twitter thread and a LinkedIn post and an email for
And
the
some of
content.
you from last time probably got this email, and you probably noticed that we had a little bug in there where it said hello first name. It turns out when you do AI
Did you,
generated content, go ahead.
did we send the email with hello first name?
We did because the email templating system that we have doesn't actually, it needs a variable plugged in a very specific way for the actual first name. And,
Uh-oh.
you know, parts of doing AI generated content is that mistakes like this happen. I mean, that would happen even if you're a human. So it's not just restricted to humans or just AI pipelines. But this is like a bug that we have to be aware of because to take it to like that last degree, we're always going to run into these kinds of edge cases where like maybe the AI generated content will inject first name later in the pipeline as well. So we have to think about that and think about how we can make that error better along the way.
Yeah. And then yeah, the other cool feature was basically, and we can get into this code as well, I think. But if we go to, I can show you here's an auto-generated pull request for last week's episode. And so it's using a different title and a
You
couple
can
other
click on
things.
the top right instead of code, instead of the markdown view, do the full proper view on the bottom. Not there, sorry. I'll draw on your screen right here.
Oh. Oh, I see, yeah. So it's done a pretty good job. If you've seen the other readmes in this repo, it's looks a lot like the other episodes that we've done. Oh, that's a workshop. If we look at one of these and you come look at the read, oh, okay.
Not this one. Yeah.
That was
That
your
one didn't have
episode.
any
You were
automation.
supposed to upload the readme for that
I
one.
know, I know, I know.
Um, but so here's like our normal README format where we'll have some whiteboards and then we'll have some code and then we'll talk about how to run it. So it's able to, and we'll look at how this context gets built, but basically looking at previous READMEs, it's able to draft a what this should look like and we've prompted to like leave certain sections blank because the goal is always to like reduce the amount of human effort. I don't think we'll ever eliminate it, and if
Yeah.
we hold off on deploying a system until everything is perfect, then we'll never get anything out. And I
Yeah.
think this adds a lot of value with a couple while still,
And it
leaving a couple things
and it
for
goes to a
humans to
couple.
do.
Can you go up really fast, Dexter?
Yeah.
it goes to like a couple things. For example, the whiteboards. Then we'd have to build a ScalaDraw integration that can go pull data from there, and that just takes time. And getting an LLM to exactly take the perfect screenshots, like that's a problem that's easier for Dexter and I to do than to write the code for doing this. The goal of projects when you build AI pipelines is not to automate everything. The goal of a project is to get a good value of time for good value for the time that you put in. So Dexter and I
Yeah.
take roughly 5 to 8 hours to automate this, to do this work every week. If we're going to go do that, spending 10 hours to automate it isn't that bad, assuming that we keep doing more content, which I think we will for a while.
Yeah.
Um,
But the whiteboard
and
stuff is, I can literally just come here and grab one of these and copy it and then paste it into GitHub, and that takes me
exactly.
30 seconds. And to write the code, it's like the easiest part of the whole workflow. So we're like, cool, we're not going to write code for that. We're going to let the LLM do things the LLM is really good at, and we're going to just manually do the things that we can do.
And it's not that we can't do the AI part. It's just not worth the time. And I think that's what we go into because if the whiteboards are bad, then we have to go in and go edit it. And that is where it breaks down, Kyle. Then your point
Yeah,
about
and
being able to
also
do is different.
I will also say that I think we do quite a bit of customizing the whiteboards. So like this whiteboard is
Yeah,
actually four different screenshots that are like ordered and annotated in a specific way because the full whiteboard would be unintelligible.
exactly. So it's not that we couldn't do it. We could definitely build a pipeline that automates this. It's just not worth the time. It's faster for Dexter and I to spend 5 minutes doing that work than
Yeah.
not doing it. With that,
Um,
I think
yes.
I want to talk a little bit more about the architecture here and the kinds of data that we were able to plumb through. Dexter drew an amazing whiteboard that actually talks about how to collect some of this data for this pipeline. It talks about some more of the problems that we have because before we can get the tone right, again, let's show the email that we have really fast, Dexter, just so people have it. I think you should have it as well.
Yeah.
Not
This
this
one?
one, the other one that we actually sent
Oh,
out.
the one that actually got sent. I
Yeah.
think I have that one. Let's
And
find
let's talk
it.
about some of the details that we need in order to get the tone right. Because again, before we can actually do the prompting, we all have to understand what are we aiming for and what is the golden data set that would really, really be good. If you look hello first name, you'll find it.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Uh, so scroll down. So there's a couple, sorry, a little bit up. I realized that I can't control your screen. There's a couple of things that we need. One, if you go up, we need the title to be correct. This is very, very important. We need some sort of nice line here that feels like a flow that is kind of different every single time, probably because it'd be boring to read the same thing, or we'd rather not have that line. Um, we probably don't need anything special here, but we do need the links to be correct for the YouTube video and for the GitHub repo. Ideally, we would put the right link to the folder there. The only reason we don't do that is because it just takes work to find that folder. And that's annoying. But the email would be a better email if it took you right to that folder. So we'd like to go do that.
Oh,
We want
I
a
have a
quick
way to
little,
find the folder. I can show you
we'll
that.
talk about, I know, we'll talk about that. I saw
Amazing.
your code. We want to have a little summary here that is not too long and really varies based on the task that we're doing. And then do you want to scroll down?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I can
after
clear
that,
your
what we'll want
drawings.
is we'll really want like this one key takeaway because, like we said, it's just useful to have one good summary rather than 5 bullet points written over here. And then we'll want to, and then the last part, go down.
Yep. Oh,
I
sorry. I
will
had to
clear my
switch to
screen.
annotate mode. There we go.
Sorry. And the last part we'll want is really about like action items for what someone can do next. That means the Luma link has to be right, the title has to be right, and then we probably want to tell people the right date of when they can go join this next event. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
components to this that if we don't get it perfectly right, it's going to be annoying. The part where tone is the most important is really this middle section about the content and the summary. We don't want it to be too long. We don't want it to be too redundant. We don't want to use like AI hype words. We want it to really just nail like the content part of it, which is hard because if you trivially prompt a model, at least from what I have tried most of the time, it doesn't really do that correctly. So getting that tone of like content to Content equality is going to be a little bit tricky to get, but really a lot of it is about plumbing in the right data into the right places, the right YouTube link, the right folder names, the right next workshops, the right one-line takeaway, the right titles. A lot of things are really just about assembling the right data. So in order to do
So
that, go ahead.
yeah, so I think this is where you're going. Are you kind of driving towards my instinct as we talk about this is almost like creating a plain text template and then filling it in with smaller bits of LLM generated content? Or do you still want because we talk about also like these longer strings with lots of like random
Yeah,
characters in them are a little bit hard for AI to reproduce super reliably. I mean, I think a short URL like this, I've never seen a frontier model ever screw that up,
yeah.
but
I think we toss in a big model like a Gemini 2.5, GPT 4o, Sonnet or Sonnet or something like that. It'll probably not mess up a short URL like that. That doesn't have too many weird characters. It should almost definitely work
yeah.
verbatim.
Yeah.
But I think the more important thing is actually that I want to share with everyone is the thing that we did before we did all of this work, which is we drew that diagram. And that
Oh
diagram
yeah.
was essential to actually understanding it. So let's pull that up really fast.
This
So
one,
this
right?
is the behind the scenes of how Dexter and I actually built this pipeline, how we talked about it. Because it's not just enough for us to be able to build it. We really need to be able to talk about this in a really nice way that helps us understand what's happening.
Well, and it's like the dependencies, right? It's like, okay, if I want to write the email, what are the pieces I need? Okay, I need the summary and I need the next event and I need the YouTube URL and I need the thumbnail URL. I don't need the thumbnail, but I need the YouTube URL to go into the summary. So it's like, what are all the pieces and
Totally.
how do we get them? And this was how we sort of like even like broke up the work and worked kind of asynchronously on this stuff.
Exactly. So like it all starts with the Zoom meeting, and that's what we had before. Then what we did part two is we added the Luma integration. And that was a little bit trickier than what most people would expect, which was what we wanted to do was using Luma, just directly pull out data and connect it to the Zoom meeting. And that
And so
also
that's
took some
what
AI. Go, go ahead.
that's what this is over here, right? Is so we fetch the list of Zoom recordings and then we try to match them to a specific Luma event. This happens to be connected to Vibov's company Zoom, so there's a
Personal
bunch
Zoom.
of
Yeah.
random meeting. Yeah, there's a bunch of random meetings in here that aren't connected to Luma events, and so being able to match those to the event lets us get the title in properly and lets us get the summary of the event in properly. That helps us prompt everything else more correctly. This is all just like engineering the right context.
Yes. Do you want to share a little bit about the Luma side of the pipeline really fast, how we were able to go do that?
Yeah, let's go pull the
Because
code up
the
here.
problems in there are, I think, are not very obvious.
Yeah. So this function is actually quite long. We have two things. We have fetch the upcoming event, which is basically like let's look at a list of events from Luma and decide which one is coming soon, is the next event. Because when we generate the email, we want to be able to figure that out. And you could do a bunch of logic of like, okay, let's look at the start time and then like let's filter them to only ones in the future. This is deterministic code. I mean, AI can do this, but this is basically just math. And so your code should do this for you. And then we'll sort them by the start time. And then that's when we go to the AI side. So we give a very basic description. We have this Luma event object, which is lots and lots of fields that we're going to use in lots of other places. But actually, for the thing we pass the LLM, we're doing a custom serializer. So we're just sending a
Yeah.
subset. We're only sending the next 10 events. And
And
then we're
this
going to
is,
ask, yeah.
I want to pause there really fast. This is what Dexter often says as context engineering. The trivial thing to do is pass in the Luma event object. We could all do that. The right thing to do, so we don't have to think about it, is context engineering, where we decide and know that here's the context that is relevant for the LLM. Let's give it that context. And now we don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, and it all
And
ends up going into the prompt. So you could call this prompt engineering, but since it's like basically you're retrieving data in a custom way and feeding it to the LLM in the way that's going to work best for the LLM.
yeah, so we took out as much data as possible and then just put stuff in. So like if you, oh, go ahead.
And if you haven't seen this picture before, context engineering is basically embracing that everything that you pass to an LLM, whether it's the prompt or the agentic history or something called memory or RAG or how you tell it, it's all just tokens to the LLM. And so you need to think of all of these things together. And like even the
Yep.
order in which you pass these things in is a practice of
And
engineering, of trying different things and finding what works.
And the only reason that structured output lives on the boundary here is because you do have to tell the LLM how to do structured outputs in some way, whether you use JSON mode, whether you use any, SAP, any other XML, it doesn't really matter. That's you telling the LLM how you want to do it. And at some point, you'll write some code that converts the response of the LLM to the structured output. And that's why it lives across the boundary of both things, because you need regular code and a way to describe it to the LLM as a part of its context on what you're trying to go do. But everything that we're going to do with an LM is always context engineering. Cool.
Yep.
Let's go back.
Cool. Back to the code. You ready to look at the prompt?
Let's show the prompt.
Cool. So here's our prompt. Let's see. So we got to see which event is the next AI that works event. So we're going to loop over those events. We're actually going to format them even more. Um, and so I think I have a test for this. No. Um, oh my God, just make a test. Was it summarize.baml?
Yeah, I'll probably make a test pretty easily.
I
Um,
think it might make a good test.
but while we go read the prompt, there's some niceties that we do, which is like, and the reason that Dex did this is because our Luma, it doesn't only have a couple of events. It has multiple events. Sometimes we do in-person ones, sometimes we use virtual ones. And rather than thinking about writing the code to only filter for things, because sometimes we forget the emoji, sometimes we name it differently, sometimes we don't call it AI that works. There's so many reasons why the event might not match. We just let it know that these are the general constraints, and now we just let the LLM go pick this. And this is kind of what I think the superpower of LLMs is, which is you don't actually have to get it perfectly right. You can get it mostly right, and now you can go ship something really fast. It's like you don't have to make your code perfectly fast. You can just use Python, and that's acceptable. Um, you can put current date or something. Yeah.
Um, 601 and start date is 0701. Let's put it on 625. We'll actually do a realistic one.
And this problem's pretty
And then we got
easy.
our answer.
So yeah. And this problem's pretty easy, so it should just work. And can you put a past date event really fast just to make sure that it does work correctly in case we had no events that were
Yeah.
correct?
Um, Bye, Bob. Birthday Zoom. I don't know when your
Sure.
birthday is, but he's turning, what are you, like 22?
Yep, exactly. And maybe 16 again.
Cool. And then
And
we'll
the event
change the
ID should be
ID.
probably different. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I bet this is specifically a bad test because yeah, the LLM will see that those IDs are just like stubs. Anyway, that's fine.
Yeah. Cool.
Um,
Sorry, you were talking about
so
this prompt here.
yeah, I want to talk about one thing in the prompt. If you scroll up, Dexter, look at what model you
Yep.
used.
Yeah.
We use
Oh,
a
it's
really small
4
model
minute.
because yeah, it's a super easy task, so we don't have to think about it. So we just go do this. Um, and then we do this is the best effort thing. If we don't find an event, we don't find an event. It's probably a user bug, so we can go fix it. It's not really, this isn't super critical to us. We can just go change the Luma event description and make it match manually as well.
Yep.
So
So
we're
we
able
call
to
that
find the
thing.
events.
Yeah.
Yep,
Wait, where did we pass this in? Sorry, I'm trying to trying to go find where we called this thing.
you can just command click.
Uh, from here?
Oh, not from
Hmm.
there. Oh, you have to search. You just command F. Yeah,
Here we go. Yeah,
there we go.
sorry. So if we don't get a result, we say, hey, we couldn't find the next event. Otherwise, we go pull that event out and we return it.
Yep, that's it. So it's a pretty straightforward thing. We just rely on the ID matching to do the trick. So we return our original Luma event that is enriched, but the LM only produces the one that is not as enriched. So it gives
And
us a
like,
better. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and like, I don't think we should spend time on this today, but this would
Yeah.
feels like a perfect example of like where you're always talking about like don't use the actual native IDs because they can be long, but like replace this with
And
like K1, K2, K3 kind of thing,
exactly.
right?
It or just like event ID one. In this context, I would call it like
Yeah.
event underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just gonna be easier for the model.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's one less thing the model has to think about.
Yeah. Cool. Anyways, that's that code. Let's pop
And
back
then
over
one last piece
here.
of code I want to show, which is the folder
Yeah.
code, the folder matching code. This is also kind of
Oh
similar.
yeah. Yep.
So in
Because
order
actually,
to
yeah,
actually
what's
do all of this stuff, to go produce the GitHub reviews, to go send the right email to the right folder, like the email can't really be sent until we have the GitHub PR ready as well, because we want to link you to the right folder, ideally. So how are we going to go do that? Yeah, exactly. Kyle nailed
um
it. It's like it's the token probability thing. Tokens that are random are just not in the data set of the model. So it's just gonna at some point start. It's gonna be like, I'm printing out a UUID. Let me just print out UUIDs. And those are basically random. And you're praying that the LM is really, really, really good at needle in the haystack tests.
yep. Cool. So
Um,
what we're gonna do is we're gonna fetch the existing folders and some file contents. We're gonna get the next folder name and a couple other things. We're gonna use the next folder name to create the README for the new branch. So this README we had in our pull request, this file, our application needs to know this full exact path. So it needs to know the folder name, and that folder
mhm.
may already exist on the main branch, or it might not, and we need to generate it. And so we need like this is a thing you could probably write a bunch of code for to determine it, like build deterministically every time. It'd be really hard to build the actual slug, like the name for the folder. So what we did was we took the existing list of folders, and I'll show you the code, and then we took the title of the episode and the date, and we said, "Hey, AI model, like either pick the existing folder if it's already there, or generate the name of the new folder if it's not there." And all of these get added. We do this manually every week. They get added to this like repo like root, the list of episodes.
Can you go
Should
down
be
really fast and also mention the other part, the table?
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
and then we
in the main.
also
Yeah,
update. Yeah, we also update the
yeah,
table. Yeah, good call. Let me show. So let me show what that looks like. And there's basically every episode, every week we push the YouTube link and the code link for the past episode, and then we post the description about the next episode, and we have the Luma link. And so that's why, in order to do the GitHub updates, we need not only the past stuff, but we also need the next event and its link. So we need the title and the link to the
exactly.
next event so that we can populate this. Where is this? Um, this table as
And the
well.
whole And the whole point of going really deep into these concepts is talking about how much work it takes to get tone just right. Like, in order to get the tone perfectly right on the email, the first thing we really have to get is like, we have to break down the problem to make sure that the data is correct. If the
Right.
factual data is wrong, the tone doesn't matter because I'll just read it and it won't work. So we have to actually get all of that correct. And if we don't have the right information, yeah, well, oh,
So like I just
the,
restating what you said,
the,
like the to generate to like solve this problem, we need to know what the boundaries, what the walls of the box are. I could think I want to say where it's like, okay, we're
yeah,
gonna have to. This is gonna be a hard coded thing that we're gonna have to force in. I don't want to make the AI generate that. This is gonna be a hard coded thing, and so that kind of starts to structure. Okay, what are we gonna ask the AI to do, and what do we want to be deterministic? Because once we have that structure and those pieces, then we can start to tone engineer, content engineer each of the different parts of that LM's workflow and break down the problem.
exactly. And then we're basically just trying to break down exactly what Dex said. We just try to break down the problem as much as possible to get it perfect. And that's because we care about the tone of the email going out. And we really just want it to be automated, but we also don't, we'd rather do the work manually than send out something automated that's shitty. So given that work, we have to put in a lot more effort to make it happy. It's unlikely that you can get to the perfect tone with just prompting. You will have mistakes like hello first name. You will have mistakes like wrong YouTube URLs. You'll have mistakes like wrong Luma links. And those are basically catastrophic in these scenarios. Like it just loses a lot of trust. So we want to make sure that those all things get squared away.
To
Let's continue.
answer, yeah, sorry, quickly
Mm,
answer one of the questions from the chat, which was where are the diagrams? I did move this file to readme.md.backup just so we could test the
yeah.
PR stuff. but
Oh yeah,
let me just put it back so you can see it. This will have all of the whiteboards in it. So you can see all the whiteboards from last week in the previous
yeah.
episode
The
notes.
new one that you're talking about, Prashant, the actual architecture, that will be coming in this week's episode.
Yeah,
This one. Um, cool.
cool.
We haven't seen Spiral Computer. Go back to the folder code decks. You want to pull that up, and then we'll start prompt engineering after we do that and actually talk about the email
Yeah,
content.
yeah, yeah. Yes, the
Joseph
last thing
asked a
that's
good question.
interesting. Yeah,
Go
but
ahead. Are you supporting native Rust? We will. I think today we're going to release Go support, and then Rust support should be easy. But let's talk about this today. I want to talk about the folder content.
yeah. So the workflow for GitHub is again, we will figure out the episode repo path, which is like that's how we generate the folder name. And then we generate the README for the episode, and then we generate the updates for the root README. And then we are going to basically use a repo called Supersonic from the Cased folks that lets you just create GitHub PRs in a single line. So we give it the repo name,
It's pretty
we give it the
sick.
files we want to update. Yeah, it's dope. And
And you'll
then the
notice
branch name I
a
think is
couple of the
generated.
things. Yeah, a couple of the things that we're doing. Can you go down?
Yeah,
Which is we're actually hard coding these file names. We're not letting the LLM make the like go up. Sorry, one more. Right here, the PR. Technically, we
yeah,
could have made this whole thing a tool call. This could have been a tool
yeah,
call where the LLM decides what PR to create. The reason we didn't do that is because we know that the LM should only ever modify two files, two readmes. So we just won't even give it that choice. And this goes back to what we talk about again. It's like whenever we build an LM pipeline, we as a team always get a choice of how much flexibility we give the LM. There's no flexibility, which is we hard code everything. And there's full flexibility where the agent is literally making every single decision and you have no programmatic code except mapping the data model to the tool call and
yeah.
nothing
And
else.
I can tell you
And
exactly what would happen if we had the LLM to call this tool. Is
yeah.
I would be like, you have a tool to create PRs, and then I would write like a 2 sentence prompt that would be like, only create this file, and here's how you should create those files. And then it would fuck it up and it would do something wrong. And then it would create, and then I would keep making the prompt bigger and bigger. And I would have all caps, you must only ever create these files. And it's like, if you already know exactly what it should be, like why are you trying to turn your own words, push it through an LLM and output the JSON or the code for what should happen? If you already know exactly what should happen, let the LLM do what it does well, which is
Yeah.
generate the README, and generate the folder. And you own everything else. If you know what it is and it's going to be the same every time, yeah, it's less flexible and you can't use it as a general purpose agent that does everything. But like again,
But we don't need that here. Like,
we don't need that. We just need to automate the things that we know we need to automate.
yeah. And this goes back to thinking really hard about what is the input span of the problem that you're solving. So, like, the input span of the problem we're solving could be everything. But in Dexter's and I case, we've decided that we only need to automate this part of the workflow, which is a very small slice of the world, which is not the whole thing, which is all we want to do is take content from Zoom and produce a PR from it, given the content that we have. So we can throw away all the other workflows and not spend any time thinking about them. And that helps us basically constrain what we have to get the LM to do. If we did have to make the full PR for everything, including the code, then we expand it, or we can incrementally expand it over time as well. And
And it's like automate with AI, automate with code, and automate manually, right?
yeah, and Joseph is asking a really interesting question. Like, are we generating everything sequentially or partially, or like what does latency look like? Well, the good part here is it's really up to us as a developer how much we want to go ahead and go do. Um, in our case, I think we do the summarization step sequentially because it's a dependency, and then we try and do all of these in parallel. But now, because we know the GitHub folder, the email will actually depend on the folder name and the GitHub repo. Now the email has a dependency on the actual README.
Yeah.
Now we can remove that dependency from being as strong simply by saying that we'll create an intermediate step, which is a new folder name, and that becomes a dependency for the email. So now the email and the root can run in parallel, and we use really, really small steps that are actual dependencies along the way. And this graph starts to look really, really complicated because that's software. Software is complicated. And the part about it that's complicated is not the AI part. It's just like these questions that Dex and I ask architecturally that make it complicated and sophisticated over time. Like the parallels question Joseph is asking, that's a question that we have to ask. We could do everything sequentially. We'd like not to, but we could. And this is exactly why this sort of thinking I find to be personally very, very useful. Um, with that, let's
Yeah.
continue. Let's actually
Yeah.
talk about. I think you showed the folder prompt.
I showed this folder
Um,
prompt. I was thinking we could look briefly at the README prompts as well. Well, so I showed the
yes,
folder function here. This
yes,
is where we get the path. And so here is our examples of repo names. And so what we're going to do is use another repo called Kit from the same people who do the PR stuff.
yep.
Kit is a toolkit for
It's
getting
pretty
file
freaking
trees
cool.
from remote repos. Yeah.
Highly recommend for anyone building any GitHub automation. It's very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, from Kit import repository. So we're gonna go like loop over the file tree, and then we basically take the folders, and it's just F's of path. So we're just gonna pass in a list of folders. Um, I'm actually
And notice
wondering,
again, we could have passed this whole thing to the LLM, but Dexter was like, this took me 2 seconds of vibe code, so I'll limit it to just the folder and only the root code. I
yeah,
won't think about it.
yeah.
Not saying he couldn't
Actually,
have done it
literally,
either way.
Claude just wrote this function with very little input. I was just like, here's how we're gonna do this, and it was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. And again, and it's just slightly better than passing everything to the model. And then we just ask the
Yeah,
model to tell us what, given the current video title, what is the best folder?
yeah. So we can say AI. The what was the video title was like
Um,
AI content pipeline.
yeah.
And the thing was 06 24, and the existing folders were 06 17 and 06 10. Something cool,
You
something
can just,
else
yeah.
cooler, and then you can basically run this test. And so what this returns actually is a episode path result, which is the path and whether it already exists, whether it's new or not. And we're going to use that. So it says, okay, cool. Episode path, content pipeline is new true. Great. And then we can
And
make
the
another one
reason,
to, yeah, go ahead.
and the reason that we don't just use like a standard slug one, by the way, over here, is
Yeah.
because a standard slug approach is actually going to be a little bit more annoying than you'd expect. Because turning our Zoom titles into slugs doesn't actually mean that they make good folder names.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we used an LLM here.
And actually, I'm just going to use our real folder names here.
That's probably better.
Oops. No, 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 no. Not paste an entire Excalibur into Sonnet. Let's do that.
And Dexter is one of the best people I know to actually do all this stuff. He's just leveraging AI to do code gen really fast, which would have been a copy and paste job. It's just very convenient. And you can get rid of AI content
Um,
pipeline too.
well, I wanted to
And
detect one that already
oh yeah,
exists.
it did.
So here
It
it is.
did.
So it figured out the episode path. So you could do some math and be like, okay, does the date match? Then pull that one out. But and yeah, the
It's
AI is
just not
even
worth
giving
it.
an
LLMs are
explanation.
great for this.
Found an exact match. Title also matches
Cool.
the folder topic since there's an exact match. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. Now let's do
So
I think the part that most people are here for, which is let's make the prompts
yeah,
actually good.
yeah. Do you want to drive for this part?
Um, yeah, I will.
All right,
So
cool.
I think one last question. Is there any tooling to hook in evaluation steps in between these steps? I
Yes.
think it's yeah, okay. Yeah, that's okay, go
Well, I mean,
ahead.
not in our system. I mean, I'll just say that I've been using the boundary cloud stuff, and it's really really good. I don't know if that's like publicly available yet, but you can record every input output pair and use it to generate tests and evals, at least at like the per prompt level. The end-to-end eval stuff, if you want to learn more, we do a bunch of stuff on that on a we did an episode a couple weeks ago all about evals
Yeah,
and the different like tiers of like really unit testy evals and then vibe evals and like human evals versus like more structured evals, all that kind of stuff.
yeah. That video probably does better, but evals sadly just take effort. And like people, I think they want the same thing with their prompts where they just want a prompt that works and magically makes a perfect email. there's no prompt that will do that magically, at least not yet. Maybe in like another 6 months. But as of today, not yet. And same thing with evals.
Yeah.
I'm going to screen share. I will attempt to not show API keys. Um, sorry, this is my Go stuff.
कल सुबह
Oh,
फर्स्ट थिंग करेंगे.
all right, there we go. Okay. This, vertex patient, sorry. I was testing on different models along the way. API keys, and let's this one. Perfect. Okay. So last time when we were doing this, one of the things I think we noticed was the email draft was not very good for a couple of reasons. And I think part of the reason that the draft wasn't very good was actually that the summary was quite bad. So I
Oh,
think
yo,
what I
you
want
got
to,
to do real time codes. Remember we did last week and the time codes were
yeah,
all in just like 15-minute increments? Okay.
yeah.
So
So it turns
this
out
is
one of the
using
best
Gemini?
models for doing this is actually Gemini. Um, and this is just, it just takes hacking with a prompt to go do this. Last time when we did this, generate email structure, where's the summary? Sorry. Uh, generate email drafts. I was working on this. Last time when we did this, we weren't using Gemini, we were using OpenAI GPT-4o. And there's a couple things wrong with this, but like I'll run this really fast just to show what happens. And this just goes to show like really we talk about this stuff all the time, but like I guess Gemini is doing the decent time codes this time. But like these times start to get like as we go
Oh
into
yeah,
this, what
that's
you will
interesting.
notice
This is much
is
better.
this is actually much better than we were doing
Did you
last
make
time.
this prompt better or something?
I may have also done that, but I don't actually think so. Time data is still a string. I think if I
Okay.
swap with the time data, I'll try again. GPT-4o. Let's try mini. That's kind of slow last time, so I don't want that. Okay,
Hmm.
I mean, it just looks like the model, for some reason, I'm getting sent off to a better version of the model today than last time.
Yeah,
But in general,
they're
what
not
we find is that
quantizing you.
they're not quantizing it. What we saw last time, if everyone goes back and looks, is they were just breaking down to like 10, 15-minute chunks. But even here, I'm only getting like really nine time segments in an hour and a half video. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But what I found is personally, Gemini works really, really well for this kind of stuff. And I suspect it's because they train more on YouTube than probably other models do. Like you just see the time code here. Like check that out. Uh, that's just a lot better than this one.
And you're still just sending the
Uh,
raw transcript from Zoom, right?
I'm I'm not even sending the video. I'm just sending the raw transcript. Like Gemini
Yeah.
model like actually breaks this down to proper time codes if you can look.
Those are almost too small. Those are like 20-second chunks.
Exactly. So it's actually giving me 20-second chunks. Um, so we can tell it that we can say time data description usually uh usually 20 to 30-second semantic chunks. Maybe like since these are longer videos, let's make it different. Usually like 5 to 10
Yeah, 5-10 minutes
minutes
I think is good.
semantic chunks, but exact time timings from transcript. So let's try this again. And what we'll notice here is like the reason that we're focusing so much energy on getting the summary just right is because let's see what it does. It may not listen to me, and I can't really force it to listen to me. And I suspect I know what's happening here. What's happening here is that the model is doing its thing, and there was 104 chunks last time. And I suspect it actually got cut off because of um, context window length. I probably just need to output, it probably just needs to output more tokens or output less tokens. This one seems similar. So let's try and go do this again. Instead of adding the time data in here, I'll remove this and I'll simply have the LLM output it as a response format. And I suspect the reason that this is happening is actually because what the LLM is doing is that the LLM is not forgetting my instructions. Because
Because
these
there's so much in the
instructions,
context window that it's just like getting lost among the transcript itself.
exactly, like just like
Like it knows
actually
it's
won't
supposed to be
render.
summarizing something, and you can maybe
I
give it a
messed
little
up.
bit of format, but
I was running a token visualizer on a prompt that is too big.
oh yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but this prompt is just like too big. Like this transcript is just like, oh, that's not where to go. Where's the test? This test is literally just
Yeah.
long. It's a lot of context. And now and that's probably why it's trying to output like a bajillion tokens to me, because when the model sees this, I bet you when it was outputting time codes, it's literally just converting each one of these into a time code. I bet this
Does this
104, 10. Go ahead.
Oh wow, yeah, you're just labeling every single one. Okay. I was just
Yeah.
gonna zoom out for a sec because I know we're gonna supposed to talk about tone today and we got about 15 minutes left on the
Yep.
main session.
Go ahead. I was gonna go fix the prompt.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the summarization stuff I think we spent a lot of time on last week, and I'm wondering if we can go like push this towards like your some of the stuff you were
Yeah,
doing with the prompt for the email and things like that.
I could go do that right away. But the summarization
Yeah.
stuff, it turns out, I think is going to be very straightforward. All we have to do is we just change it. We just
Yeah, I
change the
think
layout of our instructions.
the main takeaway here
And
is like
now,
using models like Gemini can help you do this long context stuff a lot better, right?
exactly. And also what you'll notice is I actually have the model dumping out stuff before it does anything. So I actually change the order of what I do. I dump out the transcript first, then I dump out my instructions. And that can make a huge difference in the quality of my answer. Um, and then some of the video ranges, and then let me go take this out really fast.
Yeah, I mean, you
Um,
lost your output format.
keep it to 5 counts max. And then this will probably do it. It was just doing too much of it in there.
Hmm.
There we go. Now it works. And the reason is I basically had the model go ahead and break down the chunks of like, here's 5 chunks that made semantic sense to it. The beginning, the middle, the other middle, and then eventually it had the end. And it then built a better takeaways. Now let's do the next part, which is actually generating the email perfectly. So when we go actually generate this email, there's a couple of things on here that we want to do. One, we want to give it the email example of like another email that we liked. The next thing that we want to do is we want to start giving it video summary, email structure, and everything else. But when we give it the email structure, it's going to go give it all of these concepts. And then we're also going to go give it a couple more things, which is we're going to give it information about the next session that's already in here. And then we're going to, where did this, okay, sorry, let me pull up the right test case. I apologize for this. There we go. So let's just copy and paste the summary and replace the summary with this one because it's a slightly better version of it. Yeah, correct.
Okay, so you're using the outputs from the summarization to generate an email with the pieces that you're going to build up in the final template.
Exactly.
How do we get more BAML in the training set, dude? I'm tired of deleting colons whenever I
Um,
generate BAML code.
we will just support colons, and that is how we actually solve that problem. We made a mistake.
Oh, okay.
That is really the real problem there. That
Fair
was us
enough.
trying to be clever and make syntax easier, but it turns out that was incorrect. So when we do this, the subject we already get from our old prompting video. So we just call this Oops, my AirPods died, so I'll be on here. AI that works, cracking the prompting interview. The next thing that we'll do is we'll just figure out that we covered. There we go. Where we dive into this session. So this email structure, what this is doing now is this is actually going to go ahead and generate this email pretty easily. Oh, whoops. From that structure. And you can see what it's actually able to go do. It doesn't actually struggle that much when I just wanted to fill in the blanks. When I wanted to go fill in the blanks to just make it feel good, it can do this really easily from the main takeaways in the we covered section. The question that I have to ask myself is what Dexter was talking about last time, is how can I get it to go generate these sections really, really accurately? And that's why we actually built two prompts here to generate the email. One is generate the email draft, and the other one is actually go generate the email. So generating the email draft comes from a very basic thing where I give it the video summary, I give it the transcript, I give it the video title, and then it generates a draft for me. And the draft consists of these 5 sections. It literally just consists of each of these. And now I'm able to go ahead and break down the problem into smaller sections. And what the difference here is the model might choose to respond in each of these sections with a variety of different options. It might choose to respond with it might choose to respond with phrases, it might choose to respond with incomplete sentences, things that don't flow with each other, and that's totally acceptable. So we don't have to think that hard about this. All we really want to happen here is we just want to get the content mostly correct out of this problem. Now, again,
Okay, so you're not using deterministic template. You're not like generate the bullet points and then I'm gonna like glue this all together by hand. You're actually just like, hey, generate it in a structured way, and then I'm gonna hand that to something whose only job is to like turn it back into a full coherent email.
Exactly. That new thing doesn't add new content, it doesn't do anything, it just makes it coherent with another template that we have in mind. And the difference here is like that's the difference between like it feeling like Mad Libs. Like Mad Libs, they're fun, I guess, as a joke, but no one would actually send Mad Lib stuff. It feels bad to go read that, and it doesn't really read nicely as well because our content is a little bit more dynamic than everything else. So this is, I think, where people can bridge LLMs. I still want my content to be broken down to this generic structure. But what I don't want to happen is I don't want the email to feel way too loose in the beginning. Because if I don't give it a structure, then I have to try and prompt my way to getting this email to feel this way every single time. But what I can do now is I can just have a section that does this. And I can just make this an array if I want, because I think this is going to be better. Use my Gemini because Gemini, in my opinion, is a superior model for this problem. And then lastly, we're going to go do the same thing, which is, again, we're going to have a lot of context in here. So I'm just going to move this up and put my instructions at the bottom because Gemini prefers that. And I can do this conditionally as well, so I don't have to think that hard about this.
So you're doing 2 user messages in a row there, by the way, which is something I haven't actually seen that much. Can you talk about why you did that?
Yes, I can. 1 second. We can. Okay. Generate email structure, sorry. Draft. Why did I do 2 user messages? Oh, I moved this in the wrong place. I moved the wrong prompt. Why did I do 2 user messages in a row? Well, I think what the LLMs do under the hood, and this is just like my assumption of what they do, is they definitely inject tokens in for you. So when we actually go look at the raw curl request, for example, I have the transcript and everything here, but I basically have like 2 content parts in here. I have like one content part that is the initial one and the second content part that's the other one. And the reason that I don't do this, and that I do this, is because Gemini does something weird with system messages. I'll show you what it does. Oops. Which is, for some reason, Gemini likes to put system messages not as a part of its, let me make this bigger.
Oh, it comes in a different part of the request.
Exactly. And you can see how big this context is, so it's kind of annoying.
Oh, yes. Gemini doesn't actually support system messages in this way. If you try and pass in a system message to Gemini in this way, it doesn't actually work. You can do it this way. But like it just does it as a different part of the request. And I can pass into the system instructions, but empirically what I have found is the model just doesn't listen to that. It seems to listen to the most recent tokens more. So I just embed it at the very bottom down here whenever I'm using Gemini. And what I actually do under the hood is I actually usually do something like this.
Oh, otherwise you would put a system message at the top.
Exactly. So it just gives me a little bit of flexibility over here where it's like I add it in if it's there, otherwise I don't. And like in the case of Gemini, I get like a second user message basically. And that for me works quite well. But now when I'm actually going to go run this, what I'll find is the email comes out kind of nicely. So it gives me a quick recap, which if you remember the cracking the prompting interview, like this was a thing. Don't avoid long meaningless tokens, sequences, URLs, etc. For diarization and mint indexes, this is a pretty good summary of what we have. Utilize inline comments within the model, practice RTFP, read the effing prompt, use few shot prompting to define the output structure, not necessarily the content. So it has a pattern to follow. And this summary is actually quite good for what we want. And the problem is it doesn't have a next session. And that's correct. It cannot possibly have a next session because we haven't given it that input.
I just want to call out real quick. You have a function called generate email draft, and then you have a function called generate email structure, and I think the names might be flipped.
Yes, that is
Don't try to change
almost
it now.
um that is almost definitely true. And this is probably because I initially had email
It
structure
was
as like
just
a
draft, yeah.
prompt. And it was doing
Yeah.
the whole thing. It was doing the whole email from input to output.
Yeah.
This is a good point. I'll rename this before
Yeah.
I
Yeah, don't change it now because it's gonna break all the code, but
yeah. The next thing that I want to pass into this is I want to pass in event details. And the event details will have the event name, the date, the time, and location.
you need the URL too.
Uh, ID. Cool. Here, invite link. And I'll pass in next event. Next session, we'll go in there. And we'll just add this into here. And now my test case will go back to Married Gun, add a little test case. And this is kind of the nice thing about this is the next session will be, let's say the next session will be like generating content, AI content pipeline, AI powered content pipeline, July 15th, 2025. Cool.
Yeah, we do have a description on those as well. If you go look at the Luma client, so I would probably add that.
Cool. Let's do that. Uh, and again, I could dump this as JSON. I'm just choosing not to because it's better to dump it without the quotation marks and everything else if I can avoid it. On this, at this, and then the invite link. And I'm just trying to make this easier. Next session link, invite, join. Oops. Link. I'm just trying to make this easier for the LLM to go read. So if I go read this and I keep running this test again.
Oh man, I gotta do that today too.
I know. What we should find is, again, the recap is still pretty good. Covers roughly the same content. And boom, our next session on July 15th will be about AI generated content. Here's the link. Now, obviously, the link can be hallucinated. So what I would do if I were doing this is I would just validate the link is correct. And really what I would do is like, what I would really do is I'd actually put a placeholder link in there. So I'd do like Luma dot next AI works like 12. I would do AI that works 12. And the reason that I don't put a pure placeholder link is because the LM will not hallucinate, will be like, oh, that's a placeholder link. Maybe I'll substitute something for you. But putting
Yeah.
something like gets you something that's like close enough that it looks real, but not wrong enough that it can't get it wrong. Because these are not that many tokens. So now I'll have a lot more reliability that the model will dump out the invite link
And
correct.
then what would you just do, like a find replace in the final
Literally,
output,
I would just
replace
do-
it with the real link?
Literally what I would do.
Cool.
And then and now what's nice about this is converting this structure to like an email format. I think that's something we all believe an LLM could do. So now we don't have to think about this as much. Now we can go to the, oops, I don't know why I had that.
And again, you're just guiding the thought process, basically. You're forcing it to think about different parts of what the email is going to be, and that makes it really easy for the next LLM call to just generate an email that matches what we want, instead of it having to kind of do those two steps of, okay, let me break this down into parts, and then let me go turn it into a nice email.
Exactly. So and now when I submit this, I'm going to run the previous draft again, run email structure, just so people get an idea what it looks like. And we can actually read this email and just see what we feel, because I think this is a feeling-based task. Hello, first name. We should fix the first name thing. We have to keep tabs of that. From Vibov Index. We covered a lot of different topics. This looks really good actually when I go look at this. It doesn't have the GitHub link and doesn't have the URL. Probably because we didn't give it to it. So that makes sense. It's not going to have that. But it does have the Luma link. Join us for the next session to generate content for various use cases. That's pretty good. If we had a better description, I bet this would be better. And I think this email is actually good enough for us to go send out. And it doesn't matter that this is perfect or not, but this I can just read, our Dex can just read, and we can be like, is this good enough? No, we can edit this manually. It's just one sentence we have to go edit now. Because the rest of this looks really, really high quality. And why did I know? And the trick here is we tried GPT-4o, it didn't work. We tried Claude, it didn't work. We tried Sonnet, we tried Gemini. Gemini works with Flash. Great, I'm just going to use that because it's dirt cheap and free, basically. Our problem is solved. And now we have a tone that I think feels much better than the original. Can you, do you have the drafts of the email running on your machine, Dexter?
Yeah. I don't think I have this code though.
You don't need this code. I mean, just running the code that we have on your screen. If we
You
look
want
at
to just do the re-summarize?
well, just look at this. This email just reads, that feels like AI generated email.
Yeah, this sucks.
The one that we were looking at.
If you send me this email, I'm unsubscribing by above.
Exactly. And the one that we see now is much better. So we've been able to fully automate the pipeline, get the tone. But the big part about getting the tone today was really about getting the data, getting the right data in the right place. And that's all we focused on. And once we got the right data, then it was picking the right model that could do the task. Because we know that models can get tone probably correct. We just have to find the right one that matches our use case. For our use case, that happened to be Gemini. And then we broke the problem into two steps: generate the content, generate the actual email. And that seems to work.
All right, I have one question for you before we jump into questions from the audience.
Yeah.
The world of AI moves really fast, and we're all constantly learning things. So if I can take us slightly off topic for 1 second, do you have a fresh AI hot take? Something that you've seen a lot, like maybe not even related to this content, but like what's a strong opinion that you've had to voice in the last week that might be valuable to the audience here?
Use more AI than you think and use less AI than you think at the same time. I think it's been a really interesting learning for me personally. And it really actually came from talking to kids that are much younger than me, because I've been coding for a while. I'm kind of set in my ways, and I don't really like to change how I code. I just code the way I code. But I've been watching some younger kids code, and it's interesting what they use AI for. For example, copy and paste. I will never manually paste something ever again. I literally will just ask an LLM to do it, or have cursor tab autocomplete it. It is really, really freaking good. I could think how to do that for AI, but it was my first instinct. And now copy and paste is just an AI feature. It is not a copy and paste feature. It is a pure AI feature for me. And like,
Interesting.
that changed my behavior. And I think there are other places, like for example, when we were doing the folder renaming, we could pass in all the folders into it, but if it's trivial to do the right thing, just do the right thing and just pass in only the folder names instead of all the files. Because you'll just make your own life easier. So I think that's what I mean by use more AI than you think. Like use it for places that you're probably not imagining using it for, like copy and paste.
Oh,
But
and stop trying to use AI for dumb shit that you could vibe code in 5 lines.
exactly. Like the PR thing. Like why vibe code the perfect README and the perfect PR creator when I know I only need to do 2 README files?
Yeah,
And find the balance of where that is actually, I think, a really, really artful position.
that's cool. You want to hear mine?
Yeah,
I feel like
of
I keep
course.
saying this. And there's a lot. This is inspired. I saw a lot of MCP talk in the chat. I think if you are building agents and you are building code and you're building AI products, I don't think MCP was designed or is very good as like a replacement for traditional SDKs. We've said this on our MCP episode as well. Is like SDK is MCP is not a building block for building production AI agents as products. MCP is an incredibly powerful toolkit that is changing the world because it allows non-technical or like much less technical people to add functionality to existing AI user experiences. And like your app, your production agent, the thing you're shipping, something you want people to use should absolutely support and implement MCP, but not in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to use a bunch of MCP servers and like put them under the hood inside my app that no one knows about. But you should implement an MCP client so that anybody using your app can add new functionality whenever they want.
Yeah, exactly. And that functionality will be less reliable than the native functionality you have built in, but it will be more, it will allow them to extend the capabilities. And that's kind of, I
Okay,
think,
cool.
is.
All right, we got a lot of stuff going on in the chat. Specific questions people want to do. If anyone wants to share their hot take of the week, happy to hear that as well. Um,
Cool.
so I guess
No question.
the long thread was I'm trying to decide if this will be useful for my code generation and review RAG. Is this a good way to orchestrate the agentic workflow or not so much? And then
Yeah,
I think
show
there's
me your
a
t-shirt.
what?
Show me your t-shirt. Oh, we got to get people the human layer t-shirt.
Oh, merchlayer.dev. And if you ping me privately on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'll send you a promo code for a discount.
Let's talk about where do you see AI risk surface expanding? I think the biggest area of AI risk surface is actually data leakage and data security. That's super underrated, especially as more people send more stuff to AI pipelines. When an AI pipeline randomly has a tool injected into it, like SQL injections, for example, you're gonna have a like we figured out how to deal with SQL injection. We just escape them. There's no way to escape inputs to your prompts. So like that's going to be a huge, huge area that people have to deal with somehow. And I'm not sure exactly how we'll do that universally. What about you,
Good
Dex? Where do you
question.
think AI is expanding?
We waste time on stupid shit that doesn't work. I think I don't know, there was this joke of like, oh, computers will allow us to work 100% faster. They're going to double our productivity. But then it's like, oh, computers generate 100% more work. So it's like, it's kind of a wash. I don't know. There's going to be some version of that with AI.
Yeah,
What's the
exactly.
next one? What's your take on Claude Code hooks?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. I have to go look at
It's
that.
really
Just came
freaking
out.
cool.
Yeah, just
It's
came
a
out
way that
maybe
you,
first day.
yeah, it's like cursor, it's like extensions that you can write personally that basically will like give Claude Code special commands that you can have. So like for example, you can have like rename file that just has instruction on what you do, or you can make like an agent that does research where you tell Claude Code spin up 15
Oh,
agents.
yeah, wait,
Yeah.
we've been using this for weeks. This is just commands. This has been around forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
my
what
point. So we have been having commands all the time, but these are hooks. Is that I'm not getting the difference, like how it is different.
I will look into this. We did say that we would do an episode on vibe coding, which would be a little off topic for what we generally talk about, but I think could be a lot of fun. So maybe we'll talk about this one as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, so pre-tool use, post-tool use, notification.
I think
Yeah,
it's
this is
what
super interesting.
they're experimenting with a way to let other people build on top of Claude Code because it helps build an ecosystem for them. Um, and like maybe that happens to be true where like people want to use a Claude agent loop to go do something. And it becomes a slightly more general purpose agent, but I think that's kind of what that is for them. Whether it's good or not really depends on like the quality of the hooks that people build out and like what unique ideas people come up with. It's like the App Store and Apple. Like the App Store and Apple could have been a total flop, but it turned out to be really good because Angry Birds is really, really fun. That's a good enough reason.
I'm just using it to, ring a bell once one of my like agent kind of session that is done or waiting for permission. So it'll just give
Exactly.
a bell. So it was not possible before.
Exactly. And now you can go do that. And like that's what I mean. There's small things like that where it's like if they don't get the UX just right, it allows other people to go make things slightly incrementally better. And I think
Mhm.
that's interesting. Is there any world where you can use DSPy with BAML in the future? I think they're right about prompts being the wrong abstraction since they basically just automate eval-driven iteration on prompts, but I don't like how they do structured output. I think there's a really understated thing about how people think about prompts and context in general. And I think this goes back to what Dex often says about context engineering. The problem that I see generally with the way that people are doing automatic eval-driven developments on prompts is they iterate on the whole prompt at the same time. And that is not very useful. Like I'll give you an example really fast, just to make it a little bit more concrete. And this is kind of and like I like BAML will be extensible. So like once we provide the AST, then you can do whatever you want within Python. We just haven't built that yet. So like in some sense, yes. But fundamentally, like let's just take a look at this. So I have a prompt that generates this email structure. We talked about this today. If the thing that is not good is the quick recap, there's many ways that I could have solved this. Before, quick recap used to be a string, and it was just not as good. By making a string array, I was able to get better recaps coming out of it. Whether you call that optimizing the prompt or optimizing something else, I don't know. I don't think
Well, that's
generally.
part of the signature. Like if you're using DSPy, you'd literally have to physically change the signature.
Exactly. And that's why I think like the actual prompting part isn't actually constrained to what it is. And we might even find that the right way to do this is like recap might be like a recap might look like this. It might actually be like title, string, description, string. And like what I really want to do here is like this. And maybe I want to add a description here at most 4 to 10 words. And now it's getting to be really sophisticated at a way that like you typically don't want to navigate English itself. And that's, I think, the main problem that I see with most prompt optimization tools is that they try and navigate the middle chunk of the prompt, but they overlook the fact that the prompt itself is comprised of a giant AST that is very, very complex. And as our programs become more complex, will become harder and harder to just like edit in the pure prompting side.
I will say, like, just to play devil's advocate, like for the DSPy side, like rather than prompting, like I think, and like maybe I don't fully understand this, but like my understanding would be like rather than telling the LLM to use X number of words, you would basically set up a metric and then you would count the words that came out, and then you would like penalize it for too many words or not enough words. And then over time, the prompt engineering framework would probably learn to say, okay, the string that gets the right number of words is to say these like use 4 to 10 words, but you wouldn't have to write that. You would write the, hey, here's the
Yeah.
rules, here's the metric.
Yeah,
Com-
that's exactly right. Like you kind of I mean you give it a signature and then you express kind of an evaluation function that can be any combination of like string based, any properties of the generated thing if it's structured. It can also use LLM as a judge if you want, and then it will kind of iteratively run that against an LLM with your evaluation function, and it'll figure out like which it'll try update like having the LLM write things to update parts of the prompts that are not performing well and then see how they behave. It's almost like conceptually like a little bit like a genetic algorithm. It'll try different
Yep.
things to improve the parts that the evals determine are performing badly, and it'll pick whatever helps the most and kind of add that to the prompt iteratively. So yeah, you just express like what good looks like in that evaluation, however you want to, and then it will automatically
But
figure out, okay, what actually works.
the only tricky part about that is that part of doing the application on what you actually want to go change in the prompt is really, really varied. So there are some things that you could do, for example, like you could this like the sentence of at most 410 words. Let's assume that a human didn't write that, but a model did. You can write that in many different places. You can write that here. You can write that here. You can write that. You can write that as a description field here. Oops.
Yeah, and so
And
that's kind of what it's figuring out for you is like not just what should be added to it, but where should it be added to it to get really good results.
yeah, exactly. So that will become possible once we expose the AST. But we really need to just expose the AST in an iterative way. And then like the model can decide how to go inject it. Because what you're really doing here is you're modifying the code at runtime. And that part is the part that needs to be analyzed and retroactively. Like you need to be able to walk the syntax that we have. And like clearly we can walk the syntax, but we just don't expose an SDK to go do that yet. But we will. That we've tried iteration loops like this before, and it seems to work pretty well, especially for generating new schemas. That's where we find that the model is really, really good. Like for example, if the recap is bad, it will actually just create a schema, or it'll change it to like a string array or something else instead, and that seems to work quite well.
Cool. Last
just-
question, I think we can call it. Yeah, go ahead. I like the what's the coolest thing you've seen built with BAML? Clearly, this guy
Um,
just came here to get a BAML pitch, and I'm happy to oblige.
what's the cool? Oh, sorry, there's like 7 or 8 different questions. Let me just go down really fast. I think the first one I saw was what's the versioning? Just use Git. Or like have 2 variables that you pass in and forth. Like if you have 2 variables, you can just use that. The coolest thing that I have seen built are honestly not about the extent of the pipeline. It's really about how good they are. So for me, things are personally really, really cool when they actually work like 99.9% of the time. Like this email content pipeline that we built wasn't that cool last week to me because it didn't actually produce a good email. The email that we just saw today was pretty good. That becomes cool. What I've seen are pipelines that process like bank statements with like 100 pages plus. Those are really exciting when they don't have errors. Pipelines processing tax forms. Those are really exciting because again, very sensitive data and it just works. Hospital records. I think those are, I think, the most interesting problems to me personally. But I think things that other people probably find really cool are probably along the lines of like there's this agentic framework that someone built that not agentic framework, an AI assistant that someone built that you can just talk to in your car and it just does like 7 or 8 different things. And they did that by adding a bunch of MCP tools. I think if you look in our share your creations channel, we'll have it in there. That I thought was really, really, really wild. What about you, Dex? I know you've built some really cool things.
Yeah, I think it's less about like what you can do specifically with BAML and more like it's all about the application, right? Like BAML just helps you get the performance pretty good without having to think about tuning and tool calls and all that kind of stuff. And it provides a good development experience for testing and evaluating this stuff. So, I mean, I've built 2 things with Bamble that I really like, which is like a Slack bot that manages all of our GitHub deployments and a email assistant that like you can just forward emails to it and it like looks up a list of tools with Bamble and responds and has like just like has become it went from being just like trash just dumping JSON into the context window to something that's really really clean and really high reliability and works really fast and doesn't use too many tokens. So it was fun iterating in that direction with it.
Yeah. I think the things that I found really cool in general, the ones that you built, is just like the UX pattern of like being able to interrupt the workflow when it's running with like a feedback loop. That was not a thought process that really came across my mind until we worked together for the first time, which is the idea that like I want human guided agents where I can like that's why Cursor is so freaking good. Like Cursor is really good, or any of these systems like Claude Code is really good because while the agent is working, I can chat with it and it can interrupt, change the workload into the direction that I want. That UX
This
is
is
really important to build.
This was
And that's
Karpathy talked about this in his YC talk. He was like good AI tools have an autonomy slider. There's like zero autonomy where I'm editing the code. There's a little bit of autonomy where it's like tab complete, but it just shows like suggestions and I accept them. and then there's like full agent mode, and then there's like other things, there's ask mode, there's like things in the middle. And so like being able to build AI experiences that have that, again, autonomy slider, different levels of autonomy for different modes of work, and like polish versus broad strokes versus planning versus high level, I think is really important.
And like full agent mode is interesting, but full agent mode without being able to stop it and course correct along the way is really, really, really bad.
Yep.
And like that's why that UX is critical. But with that, I think that's today's episode. Hopefully you guys saw the content. We'll push all the prompts out so you'll have access to it. And today's email should come back in a fully AI generated way. So it's gonna be fun to go see, and you'll see the GitHub READMEs launch soon as well. And if this week goes well, then we'll start uploading pretty if this week goes well, then we might start increasing the upload rate to Wednesday because we got an automated pipeline.
Remember when you wanted to hire an intern to do this work?
Yeah, it turns out 8 hours, 16 hours of our time does the job too.
Oh God. Dude, this is super fun. Thanks everybody for the questions. Catch you all next week.
Goodbye.